Destiny 2 shower thoughts. If you reverse when using a sparrow, it'll make beep sounds to indicate that it's going backwards. Typically this is a safety feature of heavy, potentially dangerous vehicles like trucks or lorries. But if we're just using these to race across alien planets, then what's the point of this feature? Do we really need to give enemies an indication that we're about to smash them into a wall? It doesn't make a lot of sense to me. Speaking of things that don't make sense, why do we have to travel across the entire solar system to speak with a single vendor? Like, surely phones exist in the Destiny universe that people can use to contact each other, right? And if they don't, how do the Guardians store all their Triumph and Collections data? Does the Guardian canonically have access to these two screens? I don't know the answer. But you know what else we don't know the answer to? What is the Veil? I'm sure there are theories around speculating how exactly this fits into the story, but the majority of people aren't going to look for them. In reality, many people who play the Lightfall campaign won't even know who Callus is. If you think about it, much of the game makes literally no sense to a new player. They're told to go to this location, beat the objective, murder this guy in cold blood, but they're never able to take the time to ask why. Because it's a video game, that's why, but that's not a fun answer. Getting back to the question at hand though, the Veil. We see the Witness open a portal using this Veil, but other than that it doesn't really do much. Sure, Neomuna's entire infrastructure is based around it, but the inhabitants are all just side characters that we'll probably all forget about in a few seasons. We see the Veil in its entirety in the secret area in the Avalon mission. It tells us literally nothing. So basically I've gone on an entire minute-long tangent about the Veil with no conclusion, and you watched it. On our adventures, we often face off against the Vex. In the game's lore, these Vex have the ability to see into the future. They are past, present, and future. So if they have complete control over time, why not go back in time and stop the Guardians before they could fight back? Like, why get massacred time and time again by a singular Guardian and not do something about it? Clearly setting up more confluxes and sync plates isn't going to work, so why do you continue to do it? These are supposed to be highly intelligent machines. How come I can think of ways to win against my stupidly overpowered Guardian, but the whole Vex population just think, welp, guess we'll throw more sync plates at him, that'll get him this time. You think I'm done with the Vex, but I'm not. The Vex are of an infinite number. No matter how many Vex you kill, canonically more will take their place. That's like Osiris's whole thing or something. So why does that happen with literally every other faction too? If you take into account the sheer number of Guardians roaming around Neomuna at will, surely the Shadow Legion should be running low on troops by now. There are currently over 167,000 people playing Destiny 2 as of the time of writing this script. If every one of those 167,000 people killed just 8 Cabal, that's more Cabal dead than the entire US military personnel. In actuality, this number would be drastically distorted by no-lifes that grind the game constantly with tens of thousands of kills already, but that's neither here nor there. Tell you what is here though, commendations. While it was initially meant as a way to give positive feedback to your teammates, it's now devolved into a massive commending spree at the end of every activity. If you think about the logistics of this, it's essentially your Guardian running up to every one of your teammates shouting knowledgeable at them for no particular reason and then moving on to the next one. Despite the randomness of these awards though, I've still somehow managed to accumulate a vast quantity of the green ones. Why? No idea. Guess I truly am an ally. But you know what you do need allies for? Dungeons. Specifically the Shattered Throne dungeon. However, after playing this dungeon a handful of times, I don't think I remember encountering a single throne, let alone a shattered one. Is it referring to this tower thing that I keep seeing everywhere? Who knows? Maybe it refers to the pedestal looking thing in the final encounter. A bit underwhelming if that's the case, plus it's not even shattered. Does it refer to the Ascendant Plane itself and how the throne world has been shattered? That seems most likely. But if Dalinkaru's throne world looks like this, then why does Savathun's one look completely different? Guess it's to do with the whole getting resurrected thing? But if she was resurrected, how does she know she has access to a throne world? And did she do all the stuff with the Veil before or after being trapped in stone and dying? Also, how does Rolk have access to this throne world? Also, how do we have access to this throne world? In the Season of Defiance story, it stated that traversing the Ascendant Plane takes a lot of energy. But I don't see any evidence of that when we visit Savathun's throne world. Is the throne world actually a part of the Ascendant Plane or not? I feel like this entire video is just me not knowing anything about lore. I'm probably going to get absolutely schooled by some lore nerd in the comments. But you know what is weird about schools? We don't actually see them in Destiny. I assume the last city has human schools, but what about the Cabal or the Elixni? The exception to this is the outdoor school in the Elixni Quarter during Season of the Plunder, but other than that it's mentioned 0 times. Do the Guardians go to school after they get resurrected? They'd kind of have to if they don't retain any knowledge of the person they were before. We know this from Crow. but just how much knowledge do they retain? If a quantum physicist was resurrected, would they have any knowledge of quantum physics? What about more mathematical concepts? If a person used to know how to do maths, do they still know how to do maths? They definitely ought to, or it would make some very interesting situations where they don't know how much ammo is in their magazine, or don't know how to calculate a gun's rate of fire, or don't know how to calculate damage per second. They wouldn't even know what damage per second means. Imagine a new light sitting through an Asda Cross damage testing video. It would end up with them using Darcy or something for their DPS. Is that why my LFG teammates have such low damage? Maybe I've just confirmed my theory. But you know what else is confirmed? A Starfire Protocol nerf. What I find funny is that up until last season, people actually used other options. Nowadays, every Warlock I see is running that specific chestplate. It's like that one Spider-Man meme where they're all pointing at each other. 90% of the Warlocks I see are running this chestplate with either the old Trials helmet or one of the seasonal ornaments. I may or may not do this myself. If you think about this though, it's basically like everyone in the real world wearing the exact same hoodie and cap, which I guess isn't too far off of what actually happens. Of course you've got one or two outliers that use sun braces and keep telling you it's really good. These are like the weird unsocial people with a really different style that just sort of sit in a corner. But you know what's funny about corners? They exist on every three-dimensional shape. Destiny 2, believe it or not, is made up of many three-dimensional shapes. The enemies, the walls, the floor are all just polygons that somebody's decided either kill you or don't kill you. Who is this someone? We'll never know, but if we did somehow find out, whoever put these spinning things in Pit of Heresy might coincidentally go missing. If we look at this from the other angle though, some person had to program every little detail you see in the game. Those random blinking lights in the distance that take up 2 pixels on your screen? Yeah, somebody programmed that. Really puts into perspective how big a game like Destiny 2 really is. Which begs the question, if Destiny was suddenly wiped from the face of the planet, which one of these polygons would last the longest? Which would be the final shape, you could say? That's a really big question. But you know what else is really big? The tower. Why did I phrase it like that in my script? The tower is a public space that all Guardians can access, but it didn't always look like this. In Destiny 1 we saw a different tower, presumably this one in the distance. You can probably tell why we don't go there anymore. Up until Lightfall there were also chunks of this tower missing too. The construction workers in the last city must be incredibly slow, or maybe they just took 6 years to get up the tower. Then they rebuilt the chunk, then they planted a tree, and then the tree grew, all in the span of a single 2-hour update. And then none of the NPCs even acknowledge that anything's different. They just go about their days, staring off into the distance at Not the Traveller, standing in the same position for years on end, and making hilarious little jokes like,
"She said she wanted to express herself, so I gave her a thumbs up."
Funny, right? Totally haven't heard that one 100 times. Also, jokes on you, Tess, the thumbs up emote is free. Gotcha. Now stop rambling about your shop for once and go play some Gambit or something. That would sharpen up her sense of humour, that's for sure. But you know what else is for sure? The slow, inevitable march of time that gradually closes in on us, and before you know it, you're being cut off at the end of a video.